It's buffer time. What is buffer time? Is what buffer time?
Hello, buffer timers. Welcome. Stardate the past. As we talk about those old scientists from Strange New World Season 2. We'll start by going around and introducing each other clockwise. I'm Dustin from Best of Trek, Worst of Trek.
I'm Ren. I'm from Ren Rants and Bilo Ren.
Hi, it's Del, once again masquerading as Estria Tendi.
And I am Scott of the YouTube channel Opinions No One Cares About. I am Orion. I am a scientist. We exist.
You have a better one than I do this week, Scott. You win all the bonus points.
Yeah, I try.
All right, so before we get into the stuff about this episode, two quick pieces of news and one rumor. First of all, Discovery comes back in April. We don't have an exact date, but yay, we're going to assume it's on a Thursday.
I've canceled all my plans for the entire month of April, so I'm good.
Ooh. It's got a lot to work on after last season, but
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it. I really hope they can redeem themselves and just close this out real nice. The other piece of news that we have is that Section 31, the movie, will start its principal photography in January. It looks like it has a kind of short principal photography between just January and March. So hopefully they just knock it out and we see it by the end of the year or early next year, maybe.
It's how much that they could afford of Michelle Yeoh is 2 months.
Yeah, that's it now. But I think she would have done it at any price. I mean, she's always been an executive producer. She was the one that, went to Alex Kurtzman and made this happen. So, but yeah, she is very in demand now, much more so than when this was first announced. So Ren, you had a rumor that you'd heard. What do you got?
Yeah, so allegedly I saw stuff in Star Trek ship posting that was talking about the Star Trek Academy series being tabled. But then I also saw a recent interview with Tawny Newsome where she talked about it. So I think hopefully it is going forward. And I was really excited about it. So I hope that's true.
Yeah, I think that's just a bad rumor. Let's hope. But like we were just talking about before this, nothing is certain in the land of streaming anymore. Everything's on the chopping block. But I don't think they would have put a writer's room together and got this far without at least like doing a pilot or something. All right, so those old scientists. What did we think about the animated intro? And is it better than the standard Strange New Worlds intro?
As someone who normally clicks the skip intro button as soon as it appears on my screen, the first time I watched this, I didn't even know that there was an alternate opening. And then I remember I was like, I think I had it on the background or something, and Rafe saw this shot. My partner saw the shot with the space bug, and she was like, is that normally on Strange New Worlds? And I was like, no, it's not. And that's when I started watching it all the way through.
I forget what prompted me to watch it all the way through, but I instantly loved it. It was so funny and so just such a nice little detail. Like there's just so much love in it in doing that like special little intro.
And Dustin is muted.
I'm going to go with, I think it's better than the regular Strange New Worlds intro for a whole bunch of reasons. I haven't been a huge fan of the intro to the show to begin with. It's not bad or anything, just versus other Trek. I don't like the way Anson Mount does the classic "These are the voyages" speech. It's only okay. It's a serviceable intro, but this is just, it's so freaking funny, and especially here at the end where we get the koala in there. It's just it's chef's kiss.
It's definitely some primo stuff.
All right, I don't know what happened to Scott.
He's playing the hokey pokey.
Do you think that a possible future Lower Decks crossover that we've heard teased over the summer at some of the Comic Cons, do you think that'll feature Rutherford and Tendi?
Oh, I want it. Oh, I want it so bad.
But I
Oh,
would
that
give
would be
it
so
up
cute.
for animated Trip and animated T'Pol. Because that's supposedly the rumor of the crossover.
This is not a good
It's supposed to be with Enterprise.
I need
Well, that could
it.
be
None of that.
interesting.
Sorry, I was all off. The whole thing with Christmas tree I was talking about earlier, well, it was all in my closet, and I forgot the very top part, so I had to go get that. And then I hit a button on this mouse, and next thing you know, I'm gone.
Oh,
So I'm sorry, what are we talking about?
sorry. We talked about the intro, and we're talking. Well, do you have anything to say about the intro? And do you think it's better than the original Strange New Worlds intro?
It's a nice mix. The last time I watched this, I happened to be watching it with my youngest son, and he was like, "Dad, why aren't you skipping the intro?" I was like, "Well, I know you don't get it, but like it's great the way they animated the Strange New Worlds intro itself, and then threw in the classic lower decks elements, like the energy being whatever
Yeah.
feeding off the ship, and then gotta love that koala."
Yeah, that just seals it right there.
And like the first time I was watching, I was like, "Frakes is directing. This is going to be great."
So the
I
next
will
thing that
say,
go ahead, Ren.
I will say one thing I do like about both the just any version of the Strange New Worlds theme song is you can whistle along to it better than you can to like the Picard or Discovery theme song. And this is like a really cute little thing. My dad and I growing up, we would always watch the whole intro and whistle along to it.
Nice.
Oh,
So now
that's
we have a new
cool.
one we can actually learn to whistle together. So I kind of do have a soft spot for the Strange New Worlds intro.
Nice.
All right.
So the next question that I had that you missed out on, Scott, was
Yeah.
we've heard about the teased possible future crossovers with Lower Decks. Do you think the
Okay.
next one will feature Rutherford and Tendi?
I hope so. They they deserve to have their fun with it too.
Can I just
mean,
call one thing about that, though?
Mhm.
The Orion makeup in this episode is not where it needs to be yet for Tendi to look three-dimensional and real and still look the same way that she does in animation. Because even now, the green makeup is still sweaty. It's not evenly applied. It's not blotted or blended very well. Excuse me why I'm a drag person for a second, but like I can look at this stuff and I can barely put on my own eyeliner and I can go, I could make better green blends than that. So I'm hoping if they are going to do something like that, they learn how to do Orion makeup like for reals. That would be
As someone who's done like full body cosplay paint like that before, it's so hard to get really good coverage, especially with colors that are unnatural, like your greens and your blues. I did like a Unity cosplay back before it was cringe to enjoy Rick and Morty. And so I was painted all blue, and there was just like nothing you could do. There would always be like a little pink showing through. And so I think like your two options with that are either you do so many layers that those poor actors are just sweating and drowning in the makeup under the cameras and the lights, or you get like that patchy, like thinner coverage, but you're more likely to still like have an actor that can emote and isn't drenched. It's just one of those unfortunate things where like green is just not a good color to try to like do that with in real life, unless you want to go like full Mystique with it and do like the really in-depth like I think
well, I
they
was
should
going to
maybe
mention like their takes on Andorian makeup are fine. And they're working in basically in this same part of the color wheel. They're just using a lot more shading. They're looking more highs and more lows, where the Orions look like they're just green.
Yeah, they do.
Shiny green, yeah.
Very flat.
Yeah, New Trek has been kind of weird about it. I mean, in Disco, Osira was wow, that was like too much on the other end of that. They went too green.
Yeah, they really caked that on.
And believe me, I love Osira. I think she's one of the best villains in Trek. But
I even think
didn't
Big
do it.
Ron on Enterprise looked more uniformly green with like shades and highlights and lowlights to it. Where this almost looked like they went to the Halloween store and bought light green and dark green, and we're like, all right, we'll figure it out. But anyway,
right.
So playing off the intro, we'd all kind of mentioned Jonathan Frakes directed this one. Which do you think is the better episode? Jonathan Frakes' first directing gig in The Offspring, the one where Data creates Lol, or his most recent one here?
I mean, The Offspring destroyed me. I still cry every time I watch it.
Yeah.
Like, that is just, that was such a good episode.
I think we
I
may have
guess the way I look at this story is I look at it more as someone who started out doing indie movies, acting, and when I mean indie, I mean indie, and then started to move up the ladder to doing more directing and producing. It's fun to watch someone make a similar journey on a much larger scale. Like this guy who learned how to sit on chairs weird, or came sitting on chairs weird, has now become a fairly prolific director. And I don't think he would have had that opportunity outside of Star Trek. So I think that's a pretty cool story about.
Yeah, and fun fact about The Offspring, that was also the first time a cast member had directed an episode of Star Trek.
Oh, wow.
Right.
I didn't know that. That's cool.
And yeah, here we come 30 years later, and I don't know that he's ever topped that in episodic Trek. First Contact, the movie, might be better in a directing role for Frakes. But as far as just a single episode of TV, I think The Offspring is just that much better. That really says something about somebody for consistency across 30 years, and
Yeah.
you couldn't actually top what you started with.
It's also wild he did such a good job with such completely, like, dissident tones. Because, like, The Offspring was such a serious episode, even though it did have its funny bits, but, you know, it was so emotional and, like, just gut punchy. And then Those Old Scientists is just so, like, fun and silly and just delightful. And it's kind of amazing that he can pull both of those tones off so well.
It almost defies comparison by how different they are. Nothing against those old scientists, but I mean, like The Offspring, that is not only so well done, it's still so relevant today. I'm pretty sure it's like just in the past week somewhere I've seen a meme of Data saying, "I've allowed my child to choose their own gender and species." And
When did Star Trek get so political?
1966.
1966.
And this one's just so much more fun. It's a brilliant crossover, so well done. Maybe Frakes was just like, nothing against him as an actor. Maybe he was just kind of always meant to direct, because he's done some really great directing.
And also with something like this, you have to sit in on all the animation stuff and all the live action stuff and maintain sort of a coherent vision of how it's going to look when it's all edited and put together, so that you can correctly direct all of the different bits. Is you have to have a very clear vision as to what this is going to look like on the little screen. So I think that says a lot for him too, that this is not just asking a bunch of people to do a bunch of things. Like now he's talking to animators and talking about choices between shots and lighting and all that kind of stuff in animation as well as in real action. So I think that, if anything pushes it above the his first episode, to me, it would be that, working in such disparate mediums and still coming together with a really good output.
And are there any other Jonathan Frakes directed episodes that you might think would be better than either of these? For me, it's those are the two for Frakes right there. Though it's arguable whether maybe First Contact the movie was better, but big screen and small screen are kind of two different things for directing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and that's
still
another
wild
thing
he could do both of those too, honestly.
Though then you get to Insurrection, but I don't think any director could have saved that. So they can't all be winners. So following that up with, how do you feel about Spock trying on emotions like hats in this episode? Is his smile creepy? And do you think Jonathan Frakes had him do take after take, like, no, bigger, I want more? I feel like that's what happened there.
The smile was definitely a little creepy. I think they did a really fun job of like reframing the emotional journey we've been watching Spock go on through the eyes of someone who knows him to be different, and then having Boimler's reaction just be so perfectly comedic and goofy. But yeah, his smile, it's definitely unsettling.
Yep.
Yeah, somebody else in our group had compared this to the Grinch when he does the big smile.
Oh, they used to scare me so much as a kid.
Yeah, I think I think Spock in this one's weird, but I really, and I hadn't made this connection until we were talking about it in last week's episode here on Buffer Time, that he's kind of like Bold Boimler from season 2 or 3 of Lower Decks, and so the two of them together, I thought was a really nice pairing. So here's more of a technical question. This whole thing with heronium. If heronium is lightweight and durable, why is there none in the quadrant in the 23rd century?
Plot device, Mr. Frodo. Plot device.
I was almost thinking because the Klingons stole it all because it's Aronium. They stole all the honor. Never mind. I'll be in my corner.
I'm going to my quarters.
Yeah, if you're going to ask anybody, they'd probably hand wave it. It's just really rare. I mean, we wanted to use it for all our ships. We couldn't find enough for all of them, and Starfleet got too big or something.
Yeah, they used to call it unobtainium.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I wouldn't question it if they just made it up for this episode. Like, oh yeah, okay, great technobabble plot device, wonderful. But when you say that the Enterprise NX-01 was made of it, and then like, oh, we can't make it anymore, darn. It's just a little weird. But
I mean, if they came out and said like, we don't know how to make what was it, Trillium D anymore, that I could be like, all right, they lost the process. They don't need it anymore. But that thing we used to build all our ships out of, yeah, we own none.
Yeah, it was a little odd. I tend to give Star Trek a lot of grace with stuff like that, where I'm like, well, you know,
there's somebody in a writer's room
gotta
with a
happen
liberal arts
somehow.
degree who's like, we need a rare metal for this thing, so that they have to get it from it's a rare metal.
Yeah, it's basically.
There's one thing though. I mean, they're saying, the next ship to carry the name has, a piece of the ship that came before it. These two ships are like 100 years apart. There were no Enterprises in between.
I didn't think about that.
We need to put this name on hold until we make an even nicer ship for it.
Right.
Well, at the same time, that's kind of answered in this episode when Boimler's like, oh, it's the 1701-nothing. And then everybody's surprised, like, what would come after the dash? Like reusing a ship name, it's foreign to them, even though their ship name is already reused. But,
that's
you can pay that off. So one of the only scenes that I found a little weird, it just jumped from like one scene to another. And then Brad's talking to Pelia. Do you think Pelia needs to show up in Lower Decks and have a scene with Bradward, in his time to bookend the moment that they have here?
I do now. Yes, absolutely.
Are you asking me if I want more Carol Kane in my Star Trek?
Yep.
Yes, please. I'll take 2.
Now,
I need it.
The kind of sad thing that question brings me to an answer of is, so there's this running thing so far that we have an engineer a season. Could this mean, since we didn't bookend this episode with her, that she's going to die in part 2 of where we left off in the cliffhanger?
Oh, don't go saying that.
They better not. They better not. I'll be so mad. They underutilized her. We could have had so much more Carol Kane. No.
Because we know Scotty's got to come in at some point too. So, I mean, it doesn't mean she has to die. She can just go do something else. But
I want her to mentor him. I want him to come aboard like a little guy, and then she like mentors him, and then leaves when he's ready to be chief. That's what I want.
I love it.
It'd be so cute.
That's a great idea. And I really hope I hope it's something like that. But at the same time, I have to wonder at the very least if she's going to end up off the show at the end of this two-parter in some way, shape, or form. Because
I wouldn't be totally shocked if she falls under the same contractual issues as Patrick Stewart does right now. Sure, we'd like to use you some more, but we're not going to force you to by contract because there's a good chance you won't be able to fulfill it.
Yeah.
And she's not that much younger than he is, or vice versa. So yeah, they might be falling under the same episode by episode contract at this point.
Oh, man.
Yeah,
I'm
I was
crying
thinking
Patrick
that
Stewart dies.
Yeah.
too. And the other thing that supports it is they didn't really utilize her a lot in this season. I think this weird little conversation she has with Brad might be one of her best moments.
I did
Weird.
also
Yeah.
just love her Vermont
Yeah.
shenanigans.
Me too.
Yeah, it was fun.
But still, there is no Vermont taxi. Just got to keep throwing that out there.
That was the first thing I thought when I watched that. Like, is there a real Vermont taxi? I don't buy
No.
this.
Oh, what made me laugh was the idea that they could bribe a border guard both ways with Kirk's chess winnings.
Yeah, so they cross multiple times. There's a lot. going
Right?
on
Like,
with
I'm
that
not
one.
saying they can't be bribed, but not for Kirk's piddly chess winnings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was the thing that we talked about when we were doing these this summer before the writer's strike. And it's like, how do you win that much at chess that you're staying in this like really nice suite in downtown Toronto? You know, amongst other things. And then yeah,
I know,
enough to
I didn't
bribe
know
a border
street
guard.
chess was so popular. Amazing, he found so many people to swindle. They're just like lining up to give him their money.
Right.
So, what is the funniest moment in this episode for you?
Boimler on the saddle. It's just such a little moment, but it's so cute, and he does little maneuver. It gets me every time.
It's the stupidest joke in the whole episode, but it's the one that makes me laugh the most. My arm doesn't ordinarily do that. It was like the most ridiculous amplitude of him having emotions is him just very calmly, my arm doesn't ordinarily do this.
Perfect.
And it looks like he's reaching out and grabbing Voyager here. Yeah, so I'll follow that up with another question we had. What do you think about the explanation of the Strange New Worlds crew looking animated being hallucinogenic Orion liquor?
Revisit this. Revisit this. When we go back with Tendi onto Orion, more of this.
Ooh,
More
I love
of
that.
this.
That's a great idea.
I just thought it
Oh,
was
right. Yeah.
it's a
They did,
little
like-
odd for Star Trek to, do drugs, but it's not the first time either, so okay.
Is this
Honestly,
thing on?
I'm surprised
Trek-
Star Trek hasn't done more drugs, especially considering like how weird and horny and strange some of the episodes are. Like the game in TNG, the one with the little boop boop orgasm game, like that felt like a very it's drugs.
And I mean, they've even gone, I mean, we can talk about the mycelial network and where mushrooms fall into all of this. We could talk about all the various planets they go on that cause various hallucinations, both positive and more trying. And, I mean, they've just never called it that before. They've never said, like, I smoked this thing and this weird Star Trek thing happened to me. It's always been like, something happened and now we're hallucinating.
Yeah, they learned their lesson about drugs when the Jem'Hadar were all hooked on Ketracel White.
Going back to, I didn't answer the question about the funniest moment. I think my favorite is here where they're trying to synthesize the Heronium and Spock's just like kind of messing with Boimler. Like, Oh, what does he say? That
Boimler says, should I be worried about sparks? And Spock goes, yes, seek cover.
not so much that was good too, but that Spock's just, he knows that he's gonna be big in the future, and he feels now maybe a little invincible, and he's like, I feel
I'm
like
curious about chance.
I want, yes, that. And he smiles again, and it's like, that was the best use of the
Like,
smile.
okay, stop doing that.
Yeah, it was really good.
There's just some like really funny asides from Mariner as soon as she shows up. Just kind of like everything she kind of says under her breath. Like Boimler's talking to her, it's like, no, shut up, don't ruin this for me. I will kill you. Or she's talking to Una and like, no, he has it's pinned up in his bunker. Are we talking about the same thing?
Yeah, I found it odd that Mariner wouldn't know what a pinup poster is, even in the 24th century.
There are people who now, if you tell them that you have a pinup poster, they have no idea what you're talking about. They don't know what posters are. I mean, come on now.
I can see that with some people, but Mariner specifically.
I could maybe, yeah.
It seems like she would know, but
She'd have a couple of Orion women like pose suggestively on a poster in her bunk, so whatever.
She does seem like one of the Starfleet officers that would be uniquely like aware of the degeneracy of the past.
Mm-hmm.
So I only have one more regular question here because as we've been talking about, it's really hard to form a question about an episode that's just so good because you just end up going, yeah, it's good. It's good.
Can I go on my little Trek journey at this point?
Yeah,
in time?
do that now, and I'll ask the last question after.
So I was watching this episode and I wanted to sort of screen out the oh my gods, it's a crossover, and wanted to look at what the actual writing was about. And one of this, Del gets conspiracies, this thing that started growing in my head is that Boimler represents old guard Star Trek fans. They expect things that if they were to go into that time period, they expect them to be the ways that they read about them, seen about them, saw about them, without all the, spit and poop involved. Like it's all these sanitized images of what Star Trek used to be. And now when we try to compare it to modern day television making, modern day script writing, modern day, whatever, there's this older guard of Star Trek. And I mean, I'm saying this being ancient, but this idea that like anything that doesn't fit their fantasies of what Star Trek was going to be is wrong. And it's anti-gene and it's bad. And I feel like you can see sort of them playing with that concept in the background, that not one character that Boimler runs into turns out to be the way he imagined them to be. And having to continually kind of swallow, for lack of a better term, the realism of the moment that he's in. He's no longer a cartoon character. He is now a real person in a real space and time that we can relate to. And yet it's so foreign to him that he's just stumbling over everything. But it's not because he's not familiar with it. It's because he's familiar with his own projection of it. And that's why I keep going back to, they're saying something about Star Trek fans in here. I just know they are. And then, I mean, the other sort of glancing blow, not so glancing, is about hero worship, which I think falls into the same sort of nebula as this idea of like old guard Star Trek fans. The idea that like, I mean, even now we learn more about what Gene Roddenberry was like on the set of TOS, and we're like, oh, maybe that wasn't so like groundbreaking for television production in the day. But also just the sense of like, also sanitizing our future is the way I was looking at it. This idea that like, anytime we've done any kind of like, in the 1950s, when we look to the future, we never thought of things like wars or even, terrorism and all the stuff that we kind of take for granted now. Somebody watching Star Trek in 1960 is not going to even believe exists now. They're not going to believe in the Bell Riots because they can't imagine that we're going to still be this way. And so I feel like I see some of that in reverse in this episode. with the way Boimler interacts with the past, and in the way that the characters on the Enterprise interact with Boimler too. This idea of like the future is not all bright and shiny and wonderful, but the past wasn't also bright and shiny wonderful either. And we have a tendency to just stay in our own lane and not think too much about the color on either side. That was my deep, serious thoughts about the episode about cartoons.
Yeah, I mean, it was always obvious that there was a look between the way Boimler and Mariner fangirl over this time and these guys fangirling over the NX-01 crew. You know,
Right.
that sense of the past is lost, and you know, it's more nostalgic. But one thing I didn't notice until this last playthrough was when Mariner at the beginning is like, "Oh, I love Uhura. She knew how to kick back," and that was like one of the things that she learns. Like, no, Uhura's like kind of wound up, and she needs to learn to relax. And then Mariner turns that into a bit of self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, that was
Maybe
really
it was
interesting.
hinting toward the Mariner plotline in season 4 with the whole like I gotta grow up, and
Boy.
maybe I don't know.
Maybe.
Yeah, either way, that was a nice little moment. I hadn't noticed that particular piece of the puzzle until this last one. So the other one that I guess we could just talk about a little bit. What did you think about this whole thing with Boimler and just devastating the way Christine thinks of that she might have a chance with Spock?
Like, okay, it was really well done in terms of like it made a lot of sense, and it kind of like, you know, took the relatively solid ground that they were standing on and made it just sift away underneath them. And that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
I'm mad we spent 2 seasons building up this romance and had them together for like 2 episodes. I hate that. Like, I know they're not going to be endgame, but give me a little more time to enjoy it. Jeez. Boimler just comes in and like drops this bomb.
Well, I mean, to be fair, by the time, if you just watch TOS, it seems like it's just a one-sided thing that Christine has for him, and you don't get that, oh, they had a little bit of a thing for a minute. So
I think we've also all been in that situation when one of our friends just appears out of nowhere and wants to tell you why your lover is a bad influence on you for half an hour, and they're trying to be gentle and they're trying to be nice, but they really want to drive home the point that like this person is bad for you. It had all of those feelings of like you're still an NRE and everything's great and wonderful, and then all of a sudden one of your friends is like, yeah, you know, he's like a convicted felon. And you're like, oh no, that's all a misunderstanding. No, really. Here are the crime reports, convicted felon. And it had sort of that, not quite that level, but a little bit of that in there. Like, let me come and rain on your parade for a second. But I don't want to, but I'm gonna anyway.
that's fair.
Yeah.
All right. Did you have something, Scott?
I'm trying to figure out whether this is a problem or not. You know, I got my side project with the summarizing all the episodes. I happened to have watched Amok Time today, and I was trying to reconcile this whole thing with Chapel and Spock, and Chapel obviously knowing who T'Pring is, with that episode and the look on Chapel's face when Spock's like, "That's T'Pring, she's my wife."
Yeah.
Now, I mean, it does go on later in the episode to explain that like their relationship isn't married the way like we know it on Earth. But it does feel like it would need a little extra explanation.
You know, Scott, what you just made me think of is Tuvok the only like monogamist Vulcan that we've met who like it believes that the person they had Ponfar with is their wife and has no interest in, because I'm thinking of like T'Pol. I'm going through like major Vulcans in my head, and I'm going, no, they were all kind of.
Well, as far as Vulcan on Vulcan, I mean, Sarek and Amanda and Sarek
Yeah.
and Perrin, but
Yeah.
that's, interspecies
Tuvok's a
erotica.
wife guy. I love it.
I know he was away in the Delta Q for 7 years, and he never gave up his love for
Wouldn't
T'Pring.
stray. Would barely do a hologram of his wife.
Yeah.
What a good boy.
Was it the same? It was good enough.
It was no
And if
substitute
Lori
for
Petty
my
looked at me
wife.
with those eyes, the way that she looked at Tuvok, there, I don't care what's at home. I'd be making phone calls, honey. There's my dance card. Click. Sorry.
All right. So the only other regular question I have here is this Trek's best time travel episode? And if it's not, what is?
Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow's probably my favorite, or the one with 7 of 9 in Voyager. I forget what that one was called.
Where
the one
she
with
was
the
like,
relativity.
Yes, Relativity.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
that's a
was
really good
good.
one.
I like weird Star Trek, so my favorite time travel episode is Time Zeros Part 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
I love
loves
it.
it. I has to loves it.
I mean,
Not big on Old West.
right. Not necessarily time travel itself, but I love episodes that mess with time, so it would probably be Cause and Effect. I'm a sucker for a good time loop.
Okay.
I just love
But if you
the.
prefer actual time travel, then probably Yesterday's Enterprise.
Oh, that's a good one. It's so hard to choose the time travel like subgenre of Trek episodes. It's just got so many of the best episodes. It's like trying to pick a favorite Trek courtroom episode. Like there are so many good ones.
Yeah, I think that's got to be Measure of a Man, though. I wouldn't have to even think about it for me, anyway.
Yeah.
And since we've got some time, let's talk courtroom Trek. Let's go on a tangent for a second. What is
It's
the
fun.
best courtroom Trek episode?
As a lawyer, I actually really liked Ad Astra per Aspera
That's fair.
because it had a lot more of the it had an actual lawyer in it, which I thought was fun because it's almost always Starfleet officers in all the other ones.
Yeah.
And she's like actually just a civil rights lawyer, not a Starfleet officer. And it was actually based in a lot of like real legal principles, and just the stuff with her and La'an I thought was really, really interesting. And oh my gosh, her opening and closing statements just goals. Really good.
And another tangent, best wardrobe across the character
Oh
in
yeah.
Trek for me. I love
Fantastic
wardrobe.
outfits.
Love it.
Mm-hmm.
See, I have this really weird courtroom one, and I mean, I think Measure of Man is the best. That doesn't make it my favorite. My favorite is the one when, and I don't remember the names, you're going to have to follow me down my weird road. Worf was on a convoy and was framed as killing a bunch of Klingon citizens who were already dead. Do you have any idea what I'm talking about?
I do. I
don't.
can't
I guess
remember
it's
the name of the
DS9, yeah.
DS9 episode.
Yeah, my memory.
Yeah, but it's the one where they're trying to provoke Worf to freak out.
Yep, and it's
And then he
Ron
does- I
Canada,
find
the
that one-
prosecutor.
It has so many different colors in it. Like, it's not just we're doing a legal episode. There's like the personal interplay. There's the more sort of wider worldview of what's going on in the rest of the universe at the time. And so that's why it's my favorite. But I mean, I will bow to the greatness of The Measure of a Man. So
Yeah, that's undeniably just like the best one in terms of objective quality, but there are so many good ones. I also really like the Drumhead. That
my
one as
God,
a kid always
yes.
just like
Yes.
messed me up a little bit.
And talking about stuff that was going on in the real world at the time, honorable mention to Death Wish.
Ooh, another underrated one. Okay. I think it's Author, the one where the doctor's
Yep.
rights in
Yeah.
Voyager to like legally have his own work are litigated. That one was really fun too. I liked that one a lot.
I guess we should have just broken this off as a separate topic at some point. Good lord.
Well, it's
Yeah, we
not
still
like-
might. There's still
I
plenty
have
of
to
courtroom
say,
Trek
there's
to
all these
talk about.
gaps in time, kids. We've got lots of stuff to come up with between now and then.
We got till April.
Right?
Yeah, as far as time travel, I think this is it. I'm not saying there aren't better episodes where the time travel like has more weight to it, and where this is just kind of fun and silly. But overall, I think this is the best episode that involves time travel for me.
I also just love, okay, so it's kind of a filler episode too. I mean, it advances the plot, but it's still very like just its own standalone, like fun little thing. And I love that because I feel like that's something a lot of modern Trek doesn't have as much time for, is everything has to be big woo-woo action every episode. And so having this like fun, silly, lighthearted, like froofy episode where the stakes are honestly pretty low and everything's just kind of a chance to let the characters marinate and play around a little bit. I love it. It's really good.
Marinate. That's funny. Marinate.
Ah!
Ooh.
All right. Do you guys have any questions or any tangents you'd like to go off on? Or more further thoughts on the episode?
I think, okay, so behind the scenes moment is that this was not my favorite episode of this season. And I didn't start out a big Lower Decks fan. Don't ignore my shirt. But like, I think over time, what's been both difficult and easy for me is like seeing Lower Decks as its own creation, as sort of a love letter to the fans. And then I see Strange New Worlds being like a love letter to episodic Trek. Like, screw this DS9 and beyond stuff. I want something different to happen every episode. And I like that season 2 took a lot of big swings in this area. But I think this is one of the first times for me that I sat down and said, I have to give Lower Decks another chance. Like, because I mean, I watched maybe like the half of the first season, and it was like, oh, it's fan jokes. Like, I can get that from Picard season 3, and it's shot better, you know.
Oh,
but
I don't know about that.
Well, I'm making a joke, but this episode was probably the one that really kind of brought me on board and said, now I got to go rewatch Lower Decks and take it a little bit more seriously. But I'm hoping to hear the same things next week when we're talking about an episode I think is really awesome that everybody else did not like as much. So I'll say nice things about this one in advance.
I did.
Good.
Are we talking about the musical? Because I was obsessed
Yes.
with that, and I'm still
Yes.
so upset that people didn't like it. The fact that people were like, this is ridiculous that Star Trek did a musical episode. I'm like, there is an episode where people are sucked into a board game, and this is
Yeah.
far.
That was the best impression of Dustin I have ever seen.
Okay.
Because you were the one who's saying it was the worst thing that has ever happened to Trek, right?
No, before it came out, I jokingly had said, yeah, it's gonna be a 1 for me because I hate musicals. And we'll get to it next week, but it's not as bad as I had originally thought. It's not The Game, it's not Move Along Home. No, it's better than all of those for sure. I don't like most of the music, but it's not that bad of an episode.
Yeah, I can definitely see the actual musical elements being polarized. Like, my mom did not like it. She likes Strange New World. She loves Star Trek. She did not like the musical episode. I'm obsessed with it. I think it's so good. But I love the big swings they took this season. It was so much fun watching them just like experiment and try some really new stuff.
Yeah.
I had very low expectations for the animated crossover, actually. I was like, how are they going to pull this off? I trust you, writers, but how are you going to pull this off? And then it just blew me away.
Ganny gets it.
Yeah, I wouldn't say singing doesn't have a place in Trek. But I will say that for all of Picard season 2's faults, I liked Alison Pill's number in whatever episode that was better than
that was really
anything in Subspace Rhapsody.
Oh, you didn't
All I
like
remember is that was
Tuvok
the fifth
poking his little liar trying to scare old little children to sleep? That wasn't your favorite Star Trek musical moment?
No, if we're going to go with Voyager, my favorite musical moment is the one with the doctor singing about Tuvok.
Yes.
Oh, I sing that to myself all the time. Oh my god, I know like half the words to that. Paris, please find a way.
Oh, next week is going to be so much fun. I think we're going to have more questions because it's more polarizing.
Yeah,
This
it'll be fun
episode's just
to hash it
great.
out.
Yeah. So anything more for those old scientists before we
Yes,
rank
just
it out
one
of
thing.
10? Do it.
Why didn't they seem all that concerned? Like even La'an, who brought it up, about altering history? Because Boimler took some big moves here. Like he pointed out Pike's birthday is a holiday. He rewired the ship to be able to track Orions.
They didn't look though.
There are some
Yeah,
freaking
didn't look.
butterflies here. There's
No
not
peeksies.
like these aren't, like just
See-
like butterflies like they were saying in Picard season 2, which messed with it way worse than anything else ever has. But this was almost Mothra level.
See, I was willing to write that off as being part of the humorous part of the episode. Is like, who cares about ruining the future? And so, like, it had sort of that feeling to it. Like, they're not going to be ruining the future by telling but they aren't.
Yeah.
But it's a cartoon, so who cares?
But like at the same time, Boim was worried, like, oh yeah, but like one of my best friend's great grandmother's on that ship, and you do something, she might not be born.
Yeah.
So they care about messing with the future, but sporadically.
Yeah, it's one of those things where like I just let the time travel episodes kind of do what they want because they're always doing all kinds of goofy stuff. Like they go back and they like meet people and interact with them and they're like, this isn't going to change anything. I'm like, okay, sure it's not, buddy.
Yeah, we'll
And
just
then
kill
next thing you know,
Gabriel
Cisco
Bell
started a riot
early
in
and have
2024.
Cisco stand in, and no one will know anything else.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah, so specifically on this train of thought, why did Pike let Mariner and Boimler just kind of walk all over him? In multiple points in the episode, he's like, people
It
are
was
like,
to
do you think
flatter
this is
us,
wise? No, but I'm going with it.
I liked the idea that Una brings up that he's kind of just almost enjoying the hero worship and also the idea that like maybe my future is not so bad after all if they're not worried about it. So he kind of like just developed a little soft spot for them where it almost seemed like he was enjoying having them around. So he kind of just let them, run amok.
It also, as someone who's been doing a lot about thinking about being old, not that I had a big birthday or anything, but the idea that you're going to be remembered and you're going to know in very specific ways that you're going to be remembered is a big deal. And it's why I tell so many stupid stories from my life, is because maybe one of them will hit in someone's brain and they'll tell it 20 years from now. And that little tiny piece of me can kind of surf along that into eternity. Yeah. But like, so I like sort of that feeling that Pike gets anytime during this thing where it shows that what he does that puts him in the chair is not the only thing that anyone will remember him for. And then if I rewind and go back as somebody in a wheelchair, it can be nice to know that the wheelchair is not the end of the discussion. And so I think in some ways he enjoys letting them talk about how he has a future beyond what's going to happen to him. I think that's a big deal. And so, but I always come things from my little weird corner of the universe. But like the idea that like, at least this gives me the sense that not only what I'm going to do is the right thing to do, but that I'll be remembered for more than just doing that.
Right.
Yeah,
I think partially it was the flattery. Boimler's like with great hair, like really. And then I literally just had it and then lost it. Oh yeah, and then like how Boimler dressed up as him for Halloween. But
so
also,
that was a great moment.
There's just a tiny thing like Pike should know more than really anybody to be more cautious because he's seen what would happen if he tries to change history. Because yeah, I put that at the end of my video and it just came back to me. So yeah, really more than anyone else, he knows the consequences of what's going to happen if he tries to change it, and then he's going to go, get Spock killed, and the universe really needs Spock.
That just made me realize something that would have like tied into this really nicely when Boimler was moving bunks this season and he had that box full of random stuff that, was callbacks to the rest of the series. If he'd had like a Pike wig in there.
Yes.
So cute. It'd be fun to like see him like trying it on and doing little Pike impressions in the mirror.
Yes.
But I think if you look at a lot of the characters who've been suffering, let me go back. the Strange New World characters that have been going through their own little mini plots of emotional turmoil. Like we see Una get that moment where she realizes that she's on the recruitment poster and it's not just a sexy little pinup. The fact that that Christopher Pike goes on to do great things, that Uhura is going to become this great like role model for people. Like they're all sort of going through that at the same time. And I find that very telling as well. The idea that like, I can be a kind of a screw up right now because I'm going to go on to do better things. So the only one that really needs kind of a booster chair for that is Uhura. But the rest of them are kind of like, well, if you know who I am, then I must survive. Which makes me a little nervous that they didn't make a big deal over Ortegas. But
I was just about to bring it up. Yep.
yeah, they didn't go, oh my God, you're because if Mariner, who is like a pilot wizard, doesn't know who Ortegas is.
But Boimler did.
Yeah.
Lieutenant Ortegas, you're a war hero. Presumably from the war we already know about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
They
again,
better not. I want a big journey for Ortegas next season. Like I understand why they probably had her take more of a backseat this season with everything she was going through. So that was like very compassionate and good. But I want more Ortegas next season, please.
This so much this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they've. But at the same time, like we've talked about, at least coming out of season 1, the actress's husband had just died.
Yeah.
So they probably gave her a little less to do on purpose in the season. So, but she did what they gave her. She did masterfully. I just wish they'd given her more.
Yeah.
I really hope next season
they had
get
like
more.
written like. Despite how little she was in the season, I think she had a couple sickbay scenes, and I think the actress talked about that being like really hard for her, and I kind of just wish they had maybe thought about that particular detail a little more. There's no reason she needs to be standing in sickbay. Have her just do essentially the same thing in another scene.
Yeah.
That's fair. So I guess one more little thing, going back to Pike and his talk about, knowing the future. Why do you think he clearly knew that Boimler was talking about his demise at some point, but he chooses to bring up his father instead? Why do you think that was a thing?
Oh, that's a great question.
Oh, wow.
I've thought about this ever since the beginning, the first time I saw it, and I still don't have a good answer. Does he really not pick up on what Boimler's putting down? Because I can't imagine that he would. He's very aware of his impending doom.
The more aware you become of your impending doom, the less you want to talk about it.
Oh, that's a good point.
His birthday's coming up. He knows, he's getting older. He's getting closer to when it's going to happen. Oh, but he doesn't know what's going to happen after like we do, though, so...
But he talks about, that's too personal. Sorry, but we'll say your relationship with your parents changes a lot once they die. And you revisit a lot of what happened, like, especially within the 10 years that they died. And I'm getting to be about the age that my father was when he died. And that also digs in me a little bit, this idea that like I always have thought of my parents as being the grown-ups, and now I have to understand the idea that I'm experiencing parts of life that he never got to. That's about as far as I'll go on that. But yeah, I felt a lot of that during the scene too, because like one of the biggest things I had to accept about me in general was that my dad was a jerk, which means I can be kind of a jerk sometimes too, most of the time. So that was part of it. That, for me, that was one of those moments where I was like, no one's going to see this because it's cartoons. But this idea of like really thinking about your relationship with your parents being the young versus to the old, and now you're the older part of that pair, and what does that mean, and how do you build from what you've learned? I know I'm going on these weird, like, serious tangents for a cartoon episode, but like,
please do. That's
what I was looking for. I was looking for like the marrow in the bone.
Yeah.
No, that's a great connection, especially because he specifically talks about how this is the first year he's, a year older than his dad was. That's got to be just a very big moment, especially to hold at the same time as holding the knowledge of what's going to happen to him.
Yeah.
No, those are great takeaways. I really like that it means more than just his imminent death.
Yeah.
And it was just a really nice way to give us more backstory for Pike too. So
Yeah, that almost I really didn't expect to hear anything about Pike's dad in that episode either. It just felt kind of like a little out of left field, while at the same time giving us so much more insight into the character in such just, one scene, and now we suddenly know so much more about Pike and how he operates and why.
Yeah.
all right. Well, if nobody has anything else, we'll give this an out of 10. I will start with a friend of the show, Norman, who couldn't be with us, who put a comment up last night. He's going to give it a 10 out of 10. And I'm going to follow that up with the same. I've never given an episode of Trek on this show live that a 10, and I'm also going to give it a 10 out of 10. It has a couple tiny little problems, but even the best episodes of Trek do. But overall, it's up there. It's up there with the Trouble with Tribbles for me, and Measure of a Man's. I think Measure of a Man's just a smidge better, but I mean, it's still all 10. So, yep, and we'll go Ren.
Yeah, I'm also gonna give it a 10. I'm a soft touch when it comes to rating things highly, honestly, but this episode just did everything I wanted it to and so much more. I think especially because my expectations were pretty reticent going into it, that just how amazingly they managed to pull off so many different things, so many great little moments, integrating these two totally dissident tones and mediums. Absolutely fantastic. It just blew me away.
I hate numbers for starters, and every week I'm always stressed when it's like, now I have to quantify this into a single, which is why I try really hard to avoid giving scores like 6.35. Sometimes I think that way. This one's rough. It is not my favorite episode, but it's not even better than Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, which I didn't like, unfortunately, Ren. But and I gave it a 2, so I think this is better than that. But I think I'm gonna go for an 8, and you guys know for me that's pretty generous. I don't usually go much higher than a 7 unless something really knocks me over.
Fair. Yeah, I'm on board here. I know it's not necessarily a bandwagon thing, but yeah, I'm definitely giving this episode a 10. It's easily the best of this season, the best of the 2 seasons. It's one of the best episodes in Trek. And if there was even the tiniest little nitpick, we do have to admit there are some people out there that are Trekkies that, I don't know what's wrong with them, but they don't like Lower Decks. And on that note, you could kind of say that the crossover wouldn't work as well if you have people who don't like Lower Decks and would need to do the homework in that area so that they know what's going on here. But then I would also point out that the people that I know of that don't specifically like Lower Decks actually really did like this episode. So it wins them over in the end, and yeah, perfect score, no notes.
Can I just point out one small thing?
Absolutely.
The crawl says that Dustin gives it a 10. And Normal gives it a 10, which makes me the only one who is not normal.
Norman.
Can I please add
that out and
for some editing here?
Well, thanks for proofreading.
I was trying really hard not to bust out laughing while Scott was talking, but I just kept seeing it going by. And I just keep going, I get less normal and less normal as this thing scrolls.
All right. Any final thoughts?
It was a normal 10. We might give another episode a weird 8. Who knows?
Yeah, I reserve 1s and 10s for very special episodes of Star Trek, and this one for me, it definitely holds up. And I'm in the middle of, I'm just about finishing my ranking series here, and of ranking all of Trek.
That's true.
And I can confidently say that it is up there with the top 25 that I'm coming out with right now. So yeah, final thoughts.
And just one last question along those lines. I don't know if we need to drag this out, but we all agree that this episode is very up there as a 10. So what's the other end of the spectrum? What would you put as a 1?
Ooh.
Obviously, I mean, we're talking about Olive Track or Strange
Yes.
New Worlds.
All of
Obviously,
now,
the
yeah, all
Shades of Grey and the Spock's
The
Brains of the
game.
Oh, you
world.
would say that. That was like the first one. That was like number, what, 900 on your list?
It will be soon because stuff's gonna
Right.
take a dive as more Trek gets
Code of
added.
Honor. Can Code of Honor be on that list?
Yes.
Mhm.
Thank
Absolutely.
you. Okay, good.
Even though I will say, I think the more racist and worse episode is the one with the Irish people.
Oh, up the
Okay.
long ladder, yeah.
Yes, I hate that episode. It's worse.
But I think the difference is when I saw Code of Honor when it came out, like I could tell it was racist. Whereas when I saw Up the Long Ladder, I thought it was a caricature of Irish people being
But
somehow
lovingly
right
racist.
here underneath here somewhere. And so, and I get how that's basically the same thing, but in my mind at the time, like it wasn't even
Sure.
a veil you could put over your face, be like, "Oh, that wasn't racist."
Well,
Yeah.
racism in the 80s on TV had a whole different meaning. So.
Yeah, it really did.
Fair. Oh, I haven't contributed to this. Yeah. One of the ones I tend to throw in is the Enterprise episode Vanishing Point.
Mm.
I
I
don't
don't
know
think
which
it's
one that
worse,
is.
but it's where the one where Hoshi thinks she's disappearing and really she's just held in the transporter and
Yeah, she uses the
seconds.
transporter
I
for
don't
the
think
first time,
that's-
and then like people start not noticing her, and then suddenly she's invisible, and like, oh wait, none of this ever actually happened. You were just in the transporter for a few seconds.
But they've
Oh,
done
yeah,
that
that was
before with
annoying.
Barkley, so like it's happened.
Yeah, Gannon, and this is why City on the Edge of
Oh.
Forever does not even make my top 100. It's got a couple of really great moments, and then it's got a whole bunch of stuff that has not aged well at all.
Angel 1 was trash.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Honestly, most of season 1 of TNG is trash. Like
Oh,
I'm
but Riker
fond
in
of
that
it.
outfit, though. That's the only good part of the episode.
Don't you?
And I
did-
really want to see Ransom in that same outfit in Lower
Oh
Decks
my
at some point.
god, I need that.
Don't you do Star Trek tailoring? Could you not make yourself a little Riker costume and like model
Oh.
it for us?
Oh, I
Maybe
probably
make a
could.
video for your other channel on it.
Make it a thing
yeah,
if you make it a thing for when you hit
maybe.
2,000 subscribers.
Oh my god.
Do the Angel. Maybe we
Yeah.
could just do an Angel One review here sometime. We'll just talk about Angel One, and I
Right.
will. Maybe I can. If I can find the pattern and stuff, that has a
I'm
lot to do with
sure. I can help you with that, Dustin.
it. You really want to see that, don't you? Wow.
course
I
I
don't
do.
have. I don't have the chest hair that Riker does.
You can
but-
get like a little
does?
chest hair wig.
Merkin. It's called a Merkin.
There we go. Working
Okay.
that Merkin.
Oh, or if you are quoting Jackie Cox, that you are now in the cool kids group in this show. Because there's like a little subsection of us that are big Drag Race fans and keep dropping little hints here and there.
Obsessed.
All right. So next week, this has gone kind of out of order in our reviews. We've got the other big episode. Some people love it, some people hate it, and some of us are in between. Subspace Rhapsody. So that ought to be fun. I think we're going to have a lot more questions, and it will probably go over an hour, I would imagine. We'll see. Depends on who shows up. So unless you guys have anything else you want to say about this one, then we're going to get out of here till next week. I'd like to thank everybody, especially Ren and their first joining here on Buffer Time. All of the
Thanks for
co-hosts.
having
And
me. This was so much fun.
Mhm.
Oh, sorry.
thank you. We hope you come back. And thank all of you for tuning in on a Sunday. And we'll let you get back to football or whatever else you have going on. So until next week, live long and